All right, folks, good afternoon. We are doing another head coaching candidate profile here, and this one's going to be a little bit of a tough sell for some people. I can see why this particular candidate would not necessarily be drawing a lot of interest, and I'm not seeing a lot of discussion about this as a possibility, but I want to take at least one video to talk about this because even though I acknowledge it's somewhat unlikely to happen, I do think that it's at least a possibility that should be explored because you'll see. I'll go through the resume in a minute here, and I think by the end you'll understand why I kind of like this idea. Misato Katsuragi. So, obviously, if Misato Katsuragi became the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, she would be the first female head coach in NFL history, and she would also be the youngest since she's only 29 years old. So that's kind of tough. That's tough to overcome. That's tough to imagine actually happening. That's a lot of barriers to break down at once. But just because those things are the case, that I don't want to completely ignore it when the resume is this impressive. So I'm going to go through Masato's resume here, and by the end, I think you'll understand why I think this should be taken seriously. I think why I think this should at least be entertained as a possibility. So, most recent on her resume would be her time at the Tokyo 3 branch of Nerve as a major in 2015, and she accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time as a major. She had three pilots under her control: Rei Ayanami, Shinji Ikari, and Asuka Langley Soryu. And all three of those pilots had very different personalities. They came from very different places, very different backgrounds, and she was able to meld them all together into a functioning group that worked well together and was able to accomplish a lot, overcome a lot of long odds, to win a lot of fights that were not necessarily expected to go in their favor. Um, these people would butt heads, and she would constantly find a way to get them to pull it together enough for them to actually win some of these battles. You can see that I wrote a 9-3 record in battles against the Angels. That's a very impressive winning percentage, and it should be noted that all three of their losses against Angels were not too long after avenged, and they were able to get the win later against those same Angels. So every time they lost, they were able to get a win back by the end of the by the end of the year. So something to be said. Now, unfortunately, the third and final of these losses did result in the end of humanity altogether, the death of virtually every single human being on the planet, which has to be noted. That's kind of a big deal. But even still, ultimately, that loss was avenged not too long after. It came at a great cost, of course, and it's too bad things went that way, but it has to be noted that every time she lost a fight, she was able to get back on the horse and win the fight against the same opponent not too long after. So 9-3, and I think her performance is even a little more impressive than that. Now, before her time as a major in Tokyo 3's branch of Nerve, she was a captain. And during this time, she was the handler for the same three pilots, Rei, Shinji, and Asuka. And again, she accomplished some great things. And she was able to actually win many of her battles. Many of these fights were accomplished when she didn't have access to one or two of those pilots. She won several battles against Angels with only Shinji, and then she won some with only Shinji and Rei. So, therefore, it's not even doing it complete justice to say, oh, she was able to win battles with just these three pilots. Some of them she won with just one or two. So it was a very impressive job that she did to cobble this unlikely group together. These are pilots that didn't really know each other before they met under her care, and they came together and accomplished a lot. During this period of her being a captain at Tokyo 3's branch of Nerve, they were 7-1 against Angels. And again, The one loss they had was avenged a few weeks later when she was able to come up with a strategy to defeat the angel that had initially defeated them. And this has to be noted, they also had one battle against a non-angel entity, the Jet Alone rogue mech, where she actually played a player coach role, where she was both the one coming up with a plan and the one executing the plan in the field. It has been a very long time since the NFL has seen a player coach, but she showed the ability to do that. She stepped up and got into the battlefield when she was the one who needed to do it. So I think that deserves a lot of credit and a lot of credibility. So this is a very impressive resume. We're still in 2015, by the way. This is her most recent results. And I mean, I would put this resume right up there with the likes of Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it stacks up very well. Now, before 2015, she spent about 4 or 5 years in the Germany branch of Nerve as a captain, working with just Asuka. So from 2010 to 2014, she was working on training Asuka as a pilot. She was considered Asuka's handler for those 4 or 5 years. And you have to say, given Asuka's track record, once 2015 came around, you have to say she did a really good job developing that talent. And that's something that's really important when I'm trying to sell this resume to people out there. Misato has shown a tremendous ability to develop young talent. Remember, the pilots were all very young when she got them. Asuka, when she met Asuka, she was like 9 or 10. Shinji and Rei were 14. So the Seahawks, as they are constructed right now, have a good amount of young, promising talent, and Misato has shown an ability to work very well with that young talent. So I feel like it's kind of a match made in heaven. I think that Misato would do a really good job getting the best out of players like Devin Witherspoon, Boye Mafe, Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, JSN, etc., etc. So the fact that she was able to bring along Asuka so well from such a young age, I think bodes very well for her future as an NFL head coach. Before she was at the Germany branch of Nerve, it was actually known as Garen, a research center where she was a private for a short period of time in 2009 and was still actually the handler for Asuka. Remember, Garen was reconstituted into Nerve in 2010, so it's more of a paperwork thing than anything, but she was a private for a very short period of time. And before her very short stay at Garen Research Center, she was in college. Not too much to say about that. But one thing that I do want to point out here at the end of this video before I close the book on this, before even college, she was actually building experience out in the field. She went on a research expedition to the South Pole as an aide for her father, Dr. Katsuragi. And that lasted several months before it ended with almost everybody dying. But she was out there building experience in the field even before she was a teenager. Yeah, when she was very young. So while she is young, she started building experience at a very young age. So I feel like that offsets things a little bit. So, look, she managed to win a lot of battles against some very powerful entities with a bunch of teenage kids. I think that's about as impressive as it gets. So I know it's unconventional, but I think that Misato Katsuragi might be the one that you kind of make an exception for here. I know that her most recent record indicates failure because it ended with the death of something like 7 billion people, something like that. But I think it's really important to understand context here. I think it's important to understand what she can control and what she can't control. There are some things that simply cannot be controlled. And I think she did everything that she could, even in that situation. And even if I concede that she is somewhat to blame for the death of all humanity, the body of work is still very good. So across 2 years, not even 2 years, actually, really just call it 1 year, but 2 different roles. She has a very impressive record, 17-4 in in battles, and I really feel like that should speak for itself. So let me know what you guys think about this one. I know it's unconventional for sure. I know that some people will say it can never work, but Misato Katsuragi might be the one that is worth giving a head coaching job even before she turns 30. And look, I will concede that if she is hired, I'll be concerned about the lack of experience, but I will be very, very excited about it as well, knowing that if it works out, we are good for a very, very long time. And what beats that, right? All right, let me know what you guys think. See you guys later. Go Hawks. And yeah, that's the resume. Let me know what you think.